Hi, my name is Jake Kaplan. I am Representative Brad Schneider's Deputy Chief of Staff, and I'm sorry I have. Thank you. Thank you so much. My piece of paper that I was going to read off got wet in the rain, so I'm going to have to use this. And I really appreciate everybody making it out in that storm that was queued right at the time of our event. I apologize for that. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few details for tonight. Our goal is to address as many questions as possible. So to ensure fairness, we will be using a raffle ticket system. This is how that works. I will call out the numbers of tickets that I draw, that everybody had a chance to take one and put one in the bowl. And if you haven't done that, can I just see if anybody didn't grab a ticket that wanted, can I see a raise of hands? Okay, so most people got them, and we will come around with a few more to put into the box. But I will call out 5 tickets, and I will put them on the board there. And periodically through tonight's program, I will read those out. If your number is called, please, and you still want to ask a question, still totally your prerogative, please go to the closest aisle with the microphone. So these two. To give as many people as possible a chance to ask their question, we ask you to keep your question to 1 minute. After 1 minute, those microphones will switch over back to this one. I also ask to please refrain from lining up unless your number has been called. To keep the process equitable, we will only be taking questions selected through this process. If we aren't able to address your question tonight, I will be available afterwards. Please come see me. I have my cards with my email, my phone number. Find me or anybody else on our staff, and we will make sure to get back to you, whether it's our staff, it's a meeting with the congressman, a phone call. We'll set something up to make sure that we get a response back to you. All right, that's enough of me. Before we get started with the congressman, I would like to, again, thank the College of Lake County for hosting this. And I would like to introduce the president of the College of Lake County, Dr. Sutter.
Well, good evening and welcome to the College of Lake County. It is really my honor to introduce Congressman Brad Schneider, who's currently in his 6th term representing the 10th District of Illinois in the U.S. House of Representatives. He was first elected in 2012. Brad presently serves on the House Ways and Means and the House Foreign Affairs Committees, and has previously served on the House Judiciary and Small Business Committees. He is a chair of the Moderate New Democrat Coalition and an active member of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. He is also a vice chair of the House Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, co-chair of the Bulgaria Caucus, and involved with several other important groups, such as the Sustainable Energy and Environment Caucus, the Pro-Choice Caucus, and the House Task Force Combating Anti-Semitism. Brad is a busy man. But at this time, it is my honor to introduce to you and welcome Congressman Schneider.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you guys made it in with umbrellas or some other way to stay dry, but it's quite rainy outside, so I appreciate you weathering the storm. And I want to thank Jake and the whole team, and especially College of Lake County, for hosting us this evening. Thought I'd start with some good news, and it was really just a story I heard coming in on the radio about a researcher at UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, who over the last 20 plus years has been studying mental health among university students. And the uptick was that mental health concerns, depression has been going up from 5% and exceeded 40% during the COVID crisis. And in 2023 and 2024, they're saying that mental health is improving. Our kids are getting happier. I don't know if we have any university students, college students here. I imagine at CLC we probably have a handful. But in the midst of everything, and they couldn't explain why, they just think that it's getting better. The other reason they said, their research indicated that it wasn't social media that was leading to the declines in mental health. It was a lot of other things. But it's a tough world. So if they can get happier, I'm going to argue we can get happier. And that's one of my goals tonight is to try to bring some uplift, to talk about hope, to talk about finding common ground, not so much in Washington, but here at home, among neighbors and communities throughout the 10th district, to focus on common sense, driving ideas and policies that will lead to the common good for our communities. Now, I know that there are some people who are disappointed tonight because in spite of the rain, we didn't quite fill our house, but we had a capacity of almost 600 people here tonight, and we had more than 1,500 people who wanted to be here this evening. That was the backlog. We had a wait list of 1,000. So somewhere there's a camera, we're on live stream, and I'll try to enunciate and speak clearly so everyone can hear me, but at least people can watch from home. And I know the other thing where there will be some people who are disappointed. I'm guessing each and every one of you here tonight has a question you want to ask. Unfortunately, we don't have time for everyone's questions this evening. I'm going to give concise answers. We're asking people to ask their question within a minute. We'll get to as many as we can. If you don't get to ask your question, go to my website, schneider.house.gov. You can ask questions there. We respond to folks as quickly as we can. Call the office. Or if you just see me around here, I go to Something's Brewing on a regular basis. Stop me at the coffee shop and say, hey, I have a question. Now, I know I also suspect there's some outrage here this evening. I think we all share some of the outrage of what we're seeing across the country and happening in Washington. I can tell you I feel the outrage. Typically, we get 1,000, maybe 2,000 letters and calls, emails a week in the office. We're getting 5,000 to 10,000 every week. If anyone needs applause, it's the interns and Avi who oversees our communications program. Because imagine they're already working their fingers to the bone and they're doing 5 to 10 times as much. We've had 3 Town Halls this year already, and we've reached more than 20,000 people have participated in those Town Halls, which is extraordinary. And I sense the outrage. We see it on social media, and I hear it as I go around the district. Last weekend, we were at 2 parades for St. Patrick's Day. I hope you had a nice St. Patty's Day. It's not just Chicago that dyes the Chicago River blue. We had celebrations actually for the first time here in Grays Lake. Green, thank you, sorry. It's been a long week, green. I was wondering what I said. But we hear it then, and I understand. I'll tell you what I see, and I'm gonna set the stage and then we can talk more about it. But I see that the Trump administration undermining our Constitution, dismantling our government. I think tomorrow there's going to be an executive order undoing the Department of Education, weakening our democracy and destroying our alliances around the world that keep America and Americans safe. I see an unelected, unvetted, and I would argue an uninformed and dangerous oligarch running amok throughout the government, taking actions. If ever there was an example of ready, fire, aim, this is it. And he said, look, I'll make mistakes, we'll fix it. But the mistakes have great consequences. I saw an election last year where here at home and across the country, voters were very clear. And it's not anything new. We've seen it in elections past. Do you remember 1992, James Carville said it as good as anybody. It's the economy, stupid. And the voters last year said, focus on the economy. Bring down the cost of living. Help us make ends meet, but not just make ends meet, help us get ahead. And what we've seen in the first few months of this year is a lot of activity, but not a focus on trying to improve our economy. I see a population, and I see it here at home, but I see it with my colleagues and talking to them, where people want a government that listens to them, understands your and every representative across the country doing the same thing, understanding our constituents' concerns, but also the priorities. and taking actions to provide a government that works. We all should be talking about a government that's more efficient, more effective, delivering for the people. But we want one that works smartly on our behalf. And that's what I'm focused on. So I know some people here, I assume, are saying whatever you do, don't do anything to cooperate with Republicans or Trump. I hear you, but I'll also tell you, I'm part of a bipartisan SALT caucus. Republicans and Democrats working to repeal the SALT cap that is double taxation, that is penalizing states like Illinois, where people who have more than $10,000 in property taxes and state income taxes are paying taxes on to the federal government on the taxes they pay to the state. And I'll tell you, I'm also working with Republican colleagues to address the pharmaceutical management, benefit managers, the PBMs. We're working to trying to bring down the cost of medications for all Americans. So where there is an opportunity to do good things, I intend to do that. All right, but that's what we have to do, and that's why we have to listen, and that's why I'm here. So my goal tonight is to listen from you, because we're such a big group, and it's actually, I can almost see to the back, but we are doing this volunteer. So I'm going to turn to Jake. Do we have the first 5 questions or 5 lottery tickets?
Yes. Oh, great. Okay. And I apologize about my handwriting. I know it's not great. So I'm going to work on it through the night.
Maybe someone else can write.
Yeah, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get better. Okay. So I asked if you can read or take a look at your ticket, the other side. I'm going to read them. I'm also going to put it up there. We already have our first person who saw their number on the board. And I'm going to read it out and then come into line, and I will just check your ticket, and then you'll get in line. And we also have Ari over there. You can go to that side as well. Okay, the first number, 5199986, and you're here, and I have your ticket. I also have 520017, 520035, 520040, 519985.
Bingo.
Bingo. And then once we get through a few questions, I'll keep drawing more. I'll put more on the board, and we'll keep them coming. All right.
And let me just ask you, introduce yourself, your name and what town you're from.
Hi, my name is Rivi Kurtz. I live in Deerfield. Here's my question. What can the Democratic Party do to shut him up? Every other word out of his mouth is either a lie or misinformation. Our party needs a megaphone to fact check him every day. The same thing with his press secretary.
So, thanks for the question. I should have said this at the beginning. I'm here in my official capacity. So I say this all the time. I run as a Democrat. I represent everybody. And when you call my office, and it might be a good opportunity for a commercial, if you have issues with the government, Social Security, passport, whatever the case may be, call us. We're here to help. And when you call us, we don't ask what party you're from. We don't ask even if you voted. We ask, how can we help? And so I'm going to be a little measured in what I can say on that. But a couple of thoughts. First, a mental health plug. Limit the amount of news we watch and turn off the TV. Because it's the same news day over and over. The president's going to say what the president says. And there is nothing we can do to make him stop saying things that aren't true, stop dealing in conspiracy theories. What we can do and have to do is make sure that we put a spotlight on the truth, that we don't just let what he says go as if it's the fact, and push back with the facts, and continue to fight to protect our Constitution, to uphold the rule of law, to make sure we maintain and defend due process so that everyone has access to the courts and everyone is equal before the courts. And with respect, within Congress, we're introducing legislation. One of the things on the Ways and Means Committee that I sit, we have the ability to introduce privileged resolutions that have to come to the committee for debate, for markup. We did this last week, a week ago Monday, where we focused on what Musk is doing, what information he's accessed in Social Security and in the IRS, our tax returns, what tax information they have. The minority in Congress, it's a winner take all. So we're in the minority. If the Republicans aren't going to work with us on the committee, we can't force Elon Musk to show up. But we can force to have the hearing with the empty seat and talk about what's happening, and we did that. So we'll continue to do that. But we can't back down. We have to continue to shine the light and broadcast the truth. And he has a big megaphone. We have more voices, and we have to make sure those voices are loud. Okay, coming to this side.
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm from Wadsworth. Started out, I am a Republican, but embarrassed to be called one. I have a question. The Republican Party, how many of them are turning, in your eyes, towards against what that prick is doing in office?
So Brian, thanks for the question. I'll touch on a couple pieces. And I use this analogy all the time. I stole it, so I can't take credit for it, but I use the analogy of a rubber band. And our political system is designed to have tension between the two poles, right? Not completely out to the end zones, but in the middle. And if you think of a rubber band, if you hold a rubber band on one end, there's not much use to it. But if you pull it taut, you can hold papers together. If you twist it, you can fly an airplane. There's all kinds of things you can do, but you need that tension on both sides. So we need both parties to be functioning, and right now we're not having that. And a lot of my colleagues in private conversations say exactly what you just said, but they are fearful to say it publicly. So thank you for being willing to say it. Their challenge is that they face threats. And many of them have talked about facing physical threats. And I have sympathy for that. I will tell you conversations, and I won't call out names because I don't want to put them in a tough spot, but I do say we have to work together. But after the president's, I was embarrassed when he and the vice president paraded Volodymyr Zelensky in the House. The next day, I was talking to one of my Republican colleagues. Actually, I had separate conversations with two of them, and I used the same thing. I said, we need you. Everyone knows where I stand and where the Democrats stand. We need your voices to speak out. And I said, I guess it was 3 of my members. And I said, I will get in the foxhole with you. I will give you what cover you need. But we have to make sure that Vladimir Putin does not take over Ukraine, does not achieve a military victory and threaten it. It doesn't end in Ukraine. And he has said this. He's looking at Poland. He's looking at the Baltic states. He's looking at reestablishing the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, and we have to stand up for that. So I don't know when we'll see the turns. I do know that many of my Republican friends, their stomachs are turning. And when it turns to a point that they have to step up and take the risk, they will be heroes. But at the moment, no one has been willing to demonstrate that courage. So thank you for your question. So.
Hi, Jill Goldstein, Highland Park. Many Americans actually believe that DOJ is rooting out fraud and waste, while younger Americans have checked out, believing neither party represents them. What is your party's leadership collectively doing to disrupt misinformation and communicate a uniform message from Democrats that successfully penetrates the message in these dangerous times?
Thanks, Jill, for the question. I'm going to touch on a few pieces. First, the middle part of the question, what are we doing? And I'll speak personally first, is getting out of our comfort zones. right? We're accelerating what we do. I've been doing town halls since I came to office. Not many as big as this one, but we're doing more. Like I said, we've already done 3 telephone town halls. They're very expensive, so we've got to space it out. We just got our budget today. We get an allowance, and there was no increase. We've got a raise in cost, but we don't have a raise in the allowance. So we're going to have to figure out how to make sure we can afford to do as many as we can. It won't be as many as I hope for. But we're also doing, and I'm really struggling with this, social media is key. The vertical video while walking and talking. I know I can walk and talk, but walk, talk, and video has proven to be a little bit more difficult. We started something called Mailbag, where I'm talking to camera, answering letters. I'm going on TV, sometimes really early in the morning, sometimes really late at night. I used to joke, tens of people are awake watching us at that time, but we're going to find tens of people. And it's not just me. Every one of us, multiply that by the 215 Democrats in the House, and every one of us is doing that. It was mentioned that I'm chairing the New Democrat Coalition. We've grown. I think this is a good time to talk about that. When I was elected in 2012, when I started in Congress in 2013, there were 42 New Democrats. These are the more center, pro-growth Democrats. Last Congress, we were at 100. We had 85 of 87. 87 ran for re-election. 85 got re-elected. We elected 25 new. That took us to 110. We just added 5 new ones, and I've got a couple more who are applying. So we're seeing more people. And within the New Dems, we've got a whole team who are teaching people how to walk, talk, and take videos. We're putting out, we hired a coach to help people communicate, because it's not just what we say. I would argue, especially in the New Dems, we've been talking about growing the economy, healthy and safe communities. We need immigration reform, talking about these issues for a long time, but we've got to make sure they're heard. And you mentioned the kids have stopped listening. And so we got to get to people where they are in a language they understand, and make sure that everyone understands what's at stake. Because what's happening, I'll save it for another question, but USAID, most people, whatever happens at USAID today or tomorrow, this is our soft power projection working with allies. If it closed down, which it did, it's not going to affect me today. But a month from today, 6 months from today, 5 years from now, where there are failed states, where China and Russia have built relationships that used to be allies of the United States, we're going to feel it aplenty. So that's good. So thank you for the question.
Hi, my name is Henry from Deerfield. Question is, what can be done about the White House press corps being censored and people kicked out because Trump doesn't like an answer?
Yeah, great
question. And when you think about the press corps that was screaming and yelling at Biden for 4 years, and these idiots sit on their hands and don't even open up their mouth when he says all these stupid things, what can be done about that?
I don't have a great answer, to be honest, because they control that space. The White House controls that space, and they're kicking out. It's not so much a matter of kicking out what they call the mainstream media, and to a great extent it is. It's the television news programs, it's news sources, but they're bringing in others that are propagandists, not news outlets, and controlling the message. Every one of us here, I'm looking, there are some people as old as I am, we read 1984 before it was 1984, right? But the double speak of that, there's so many things, and I was thinking about it today. DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, comes right out of 1984 double speak, and the costs and loss, cutting Social Security, closing offices, eliminating the phone service, and cutting the people who get out the checks. That's not efficient. In fact, people are warning that for the first time in the history of Social Security, next month checks may be delayed. That's never happened before. And those are checks that seniors literally depend on to make ends meet, to buy food, to buy medicines. And that's what we're facing. So it's a real concern. I think that what we have to do, I would say this: subscribe to local newspapers. We need local newspapers. It's not just a federal problem. Pay the price for the local newspapers so they can stay in business. Continue to make sure you're getting your news from reliable sources. Share it when you can. And we're looking for ways within legislation to try to provide resources so that news can remain independent of government, but can remain economically viable, so we have the fourth estate who is holding government to account, because it's critical. So thank you. Are we at the next round of questions?
Before we get to our next question, I'm just going to read off 4 more tickets. So take a look now. I have 62000022. That's a different, it's just a random order. I also have 52000022. I have 52000007, and I have 6199998.
It's a lot of nines.
All right. Hi, Kathleen from Green Oaks. Good to see you again,
Kathleen.
Congressman. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for always talking to your constituents. Really appreciate it. I've got a bazillion questions.
Only one.
I know. So what I'm going to focus on today, because it's top of the news again, is the distinction between the branches of government and what we can do, what our judicial branch can do to keep the president in check, and what the Congress can do to help that as well. Because we have the whole Venezuelan issue that's going on, and the deportees, and they're not following the judge's order.
Right. Yeah, let me touch on that. I'm looking if there's any kids here tonight. And we learn in 5th grade the basics of, it's the first time most students are taught the 3 branches of government. And I can go into a 5th grade class and ask them, name the 3 branches, and they will stumble over the words, legislate, and they don't really understand executive and then judiciary. But that's when it starts, and we learn it more profoundly as we go through schooling and understand the checks and balances and understand why it's so important. Because 248 years ago, when this nation declared its independence, we were declaring our independence from a monarchy, from a king. And 13 years later, when they were writing the Constitution, they went out of their way not to have a monarchy. There was no such thing as nobility. I mean, in Article 2 of the Constitution that establishes Congress, there's language that says we cannot make ourselves nobles, essentially. No House of Lords, if you will. And so it is critical to the success of our nation over the years and our ability to move our democracy forward, looking ahead. And Trump is challenging that. He has gone up to the line, and so I hesitated. The Venezuela case is an example. So the case of the gang members who were shipped from the U.S. to El Salvador because Venezuela, right? Okay, we'll come back to that. All right, let me say it this way: any gang member who is here illegally should be shipped out. Everyone should have due process, so that we have not the assumption or presumption, but the determination. And the judge said, turn the plane around, and these folks are saying, well, it's too late. I mean, you saw the president of El Salvador. It's amazing that we're now communicating globally with tweets, but he says, oopsie, and then the administration retweets that or reposts that, and that's where we are. But now they're having the debate, and the administration says, we will follow the court. So we're getting close to that, and they keep pushing that boundary. And the judge, the president, said we should impeach that judge because he is. And then someone asked about the presidential press secretary. She's saying that the judge is a Democrat. Well, the judge was appointed by George W. Bush. Start with that. He's a conservative judge, following the law and upholding the Constitution, which was right to do. And so the first line, and I think the Chief Justice put his foot down, see how it goes, and said, impeachment is not the way the system works. We have a process of appeal by design, and we will let this go through the appeals process. So I think I take that as a good sign for the moment. Within the legislative branch, the powers we have to try to deal with the immediate moment is the power of oversight. And even in the minority, we can push to shine that light, to put the spotlight on what's happening, to call people in front. Even if the Republicans, the majority, won't allow an official hearing, we can have briefings and with public eye and do that. We have to extend that. There is a broader issue because for more than half a century, Congress has been ceding Article 1 authority of the legislative branch to the executive branch, and we need to pull that back. And that's not an immediate get it done today because we're not in a position to, and it's not going to happen overnight, but that's something we have to put a focus on to do in the future to make sure that all three branches stand strong. We also need to get politics out of the judicial branch. It doesn't matter, in my mind, it shouldn't matter who appoints a judge, the law is the law. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane from Underline. And while I do think what's going on right now is crazy, and like you're saying, ready, fire, aim. But I do believe that there can be bipartisan efforts going on, and I'm hoping that's true. We've seen it in the past that it can work. My concern is I'm really worried about the debt that we would be leaving, the next generations. And I'm just wondering whether, is it possible in a bipartisan way that we can look within government and see if there is, unnecessary spending, not necessarily waste, but, I grew up when I was in high school, right? Senator Proxmire from Wisconsin had his Golden Fleece Award.
Yeah.
Exactly. And he put a light out on wasteful spending, and, being a Democrat, put it out there. I'm just curious if, it is possible that, given the light that's now on government spending, is there a way to go about it in a bipartisan way?
Thank you.
Because I think both Democrats and Republicans know that there's unnecessary spending somewhere.
Yep.
So, how do we go about doing it in a diplomatic and
I agree with you, and
way?
I'm going to tell you good news, bad news, but hopefully finish with good news. Because the good news, I'll talk about the debt and what we're trying to do and where things are now, but then I also want to talk about trying to improve efficiency. Last Congress, a group of us, Republicans and Democrats, and I can never remember what it stands for. The initials are BFF, the Budget Framework Forum or something like that. But it's a bipartisan group of us, and we set up and introduced legislation to create a fiscal commission that would look at the debt. We're at $37 trillion of debt today for a nation. It's projected to grow the deficit at 1.7 trillion over the next 10 years. And unfortunately, the budget the budget that we voted against 2 weeks ago that has all kinds of cuts, so we can talk about that, didn't bring down the debt. It added $300 billion a year. So that would add $20 trillion over the next 20 years to bring it up well over 50. And those are underestimates. So that's where it goes. We can't do that to our kids. It's just not fair. So we had legislation that passed the budget committee markup, sent to the floor for a vote, and unfortunately, Speaker Johnson wouldn't allow us to have a vote on it. BFF still exists. In fact, we're working on the legislation. At the moment, it's not bipartisan. It is only the Democratic half. We're one hand clapping because our Republican friends, and this goes to the earlier question, can't join us in this moment because of where they are. We're hopeful that we'll get to that place because it has to be bipartisan. When I'm talking to school kids, I have them, if they have the old smooth school desk, this works great. I said, take out a number 2 pencil. Say, take your right hand, push the pencil lead end of the pencil. What happens? And it goes in a circle. I said, now take your left hand and push the eraser end of the pencil. What happens is it goes in the circle. Say, take your 2 fingers and put them in the middle of the pencil and look what you can do. Because when you have 2 fingers in the middle, you can move that pencil all over the desk. We have to sharpen our pencils. And I'll come to that in a second, and we have to work together. And by the sharpen our pencils, of course, there's going to be ways we can improve our government. When I said Elon Musk is using this ready, fire, aim, going about it in exactly the wrong way, before I went to Congress, I was in business. And early in my career, I worked with large corporations and we had words back then, euphemisms of right sizing and other things. But there were questions you would ask, and there are 3 basic questions. The first question, and we should be asking this in government, should it be done? Looking at everything government does, ask, should it be done? There are things that are being done. Maybe it made sense 100 years ago. Does it make sense today? If it shouldn't be done, stop doing it. It's easy. But if it should be done, you ask the second question. Is the government the best one to do it? And there are things that the government may have been once, but aren't now. And look, I am so happy those 2 astronauts got home, right? And don't boo me on this, because it was SpaceX that brought them home, but it was SpaceX, a not government entity, and there's other non-government entities that now are able to build rockets that never could have built the rocket that went to the moon with James Lovell back when, right? So if we're not the best to do it, assign it to someone else. And the third question is, if the government's the one who should be doing it, are we doing it in the most efficient and most effective way? And I promise you, 99 out of 100 times, the answer is going to be no, we can do it better. And then you go and you figure out how to do it better, right? That's how it's supposed to be done. And that should be done in a bipartisan way. And I will tell you, everyone I work with, except the fringes on the 2 sides, would agree with me on what I just said. So I am hopeful. I said the bad news is it's not bipartisan right now. Good news is we can't sustain this debt. And when I'll give my last little piece because I like telling it. If you took $100 bills and stacked them to $1 million, it would be 358 feet tall, a 30-story building. But if you turn it on its side, that is essentially the distance between goalposts at Soldier Field, right? And if we keep adding dollar bills until we get to $1 billion, anyone want to guess where that $1 billion would be, that mark would be? Kenosha. I'm going north. Soldier Field runs north-south, right? It's 67 miles to Kenosha. And if I keep going until I get to $1 trillion, anyone want to guess? 2.5 times around the world. $1 trillion, when we're talking millions, billions, trillions, we lose sight that each one of those is a multiple of 1,000. So $1 trillion is not 67 miles again, it's 67,000 miles. And so the $4 trillion that the president wants to add in debt is 10 times around the world. We can't keep doing that to our kids. So thank you for the question.
Hello, Susan Elfon from Northbrook. I appreciate that you're trying to walk and talk and use a cell phone. I want to know how Democrats are going to work together to have an impactful, consistent message that's easily understood, that says what Democrats are for and how it's different than what Republicans are doing. What happened at the State of the Union was embarrassing. Some people were there, some people weren't. The stupid signs, the clothing, the social media, choose your fighter, so cringeworthy. So just hiring someone and everybody, you doing one thing and another congressman doing another and another doing another, we need consistency. Where's the cool infographic that everybody's using? What are the consistent messages? And what is the DNC doing? I assume the DNC should have a role in really developing cohesive messaging. Republicans, the one thing they do well is they all do the same thing. They say the same thing. They work together. We need this from the Democrats.
Thank you.
So I don't want you doing something, your own thing, that's not the same thing that another congressman's doing.
So it's
better together.
Yeah, and remember, I'm here officially, so I'm going to try to walk this line. The first thing I'll say is, and I'll get it. There's parallel structures. There's the RNC and the DNC, the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee, and then changes a little bit in the House, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and the National Republican Campaign Committee. So they have slightly, but they're the same thing. Here's the thing. In the House Republicans look to Mike Johnson. House Democrats look to Hakeem Jeffries for leadership. Neither Dems nor Republicans in the House look to John Thune or Chuck Schumer in the Senate. But when you have the House, the Senate, and the President, there's no question who the spokesperson and leader of a party is. When you have neither, there's lots of questions. So the DNC and the RNC, remember I have to be nonpartisan here, they speak only at the president. All they care about is the presidential election. They couldn't care less about who's in the House or not. Overstating it a little bit. So it is not unusual when a party loses, the trifecta, as they say it, that you're going to see that question of who's stepping up to the plate. And that's where the Democrats are. But this is my commercial. This was for the New Democrat Coalition that I'm chairing. If you go to newdemocratcoalition.gov, you can see it. But we put out a vision of what we believe. And this is not everybody, because New Dems see things differently than the Progressive Caucus in many ways. There's overlap. About a quarter of our members are also Progressive Caucus members. But we talked about what's important. We talked about 3 pillars, the idea of economic abundance, economic growth and opportunity as pillar number 1, healthy and safe communities, that everyone can feel confident in their homes, sending their kids to school, on their way to work, and strong national security, national defense, that we feel safe in the world, and the United States is leading that world order that really defined the 20th century as the American century. That's our vision. And we're working, and those are going to wrestle, but that will get there. We have 9 working groups that are trying to drive that are focused on those members who are coming up with the ideas. But it takes time. Meanwhile, we have to stand up to what we're seeing day in and day out. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking a lot, I imagine, about the dismantling of the Department of Education. And I should have started here. My wife, Julie, is here with me. I couldn't do what I do without Julie. And together we raised 2 extraordinary young men, Adam and Daniel. Thank you. Both our kids had IEPs. Now, their challenges were, I would put in the frame of modest. I'll brag a bit. Our kids are doing very well. Our oldest is going to graduate law school in May. But it is the Department of Education that leads the way on special ed, on making sure we're giving schools and especially teachers the resources to educate kids. Again, I'm going to pick on those of us who are a little grayer in hair or longer in tooth. When I went to school, everyone learned on a straight line, right? You first grade, second grade, except none of us were on that line. You just had to fit there and they forced you. No one learns on that line. Our kids today, they're happier for it, evidently, according to the radio story, but our kids today are getting lessons they need where they are. They're facing more challenges, having to learn more things than we ever had to learn. But many of them are succeeding, but many of them are being left behind. And we need to make sure that all of our kids, if we're going to compete with China and India, who have 10 times as many kids as we have, who if China and India educate 1/10 of their kids to honors level, they'll have more honor students, AP students, science, doctors, etc., than we start with as students. We can't afford to let any kid fall through the cracks. And that's what the Department of Education is supposed to be doing. Is there room for improvement? 1,000%, which doesn't exist, so I should go back to school. But we need to make sure that we're educating our kids. And so we've got to fight for that. So it's a combination of things. The message will come. Hopefully, the message that we're trying to drive will be the one that wins out the argument. Thank you. Tobin.
Hi, my name's Tobin from Mundelein. To piggyback on what the woman said over here, it seems as if the Republican Party, although it's really the party of Trump, I hate to say that because there are Republicans here and around who are not Trumpists. So, but They're controlling the narrative. They're using fear. They're using all kinds of things to bludgeon the rest of the country. The Democrats seem to come across as weak. And it is, and to say that they aren't speaking with that single voice, the one that epitomizes strength. And that's how, at least to me, we need to fight back. How do you get the progressive part of the Progressive Coalition and the New Dems and the Black Caucus to try and see what we're facing so that we can speak with that one voice?
Yeah. Great question. I have spent my entire life trying to bring people together. I mentioned before, Congress, I was in business. One of the hardest challenges somehow wasn't just me, it was me, my father, and my sister. We all ended up advising family businesses. So imagine all the problems at a family Thanksgiving dinner and the boardroom stuck together. And so if you can do that, you can really, other than kindergarten, I don't know anything is more difficult to herding cats. But it's a matter of finding where there is, I mentioned common ground at the beginning, where there is that common ground and putting people towards a common direction. And I think Democrats do have that now. So I was elected to chair the New Dems in November. The first thing I did was reach out to the other chairs of other coalitions and caucuses. On the Democratic side, it's the Progressive Caucus. Greg Casar is the chair there. And there's the Blue Dogs and Jared Golden and Marie Glusenkamp Perez. On the Republican side, I reached out to David Valadeo, who heads the Republican Government Group, Kevin Hearn. I met with Mike Flood, continue to meet. Life and politics, and maybe especially politics, is building those relationships. And what comes from that? Well, Greg Casar and I put together a letter saying we need to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. And we ended up having every member of the Progressive Caucus and every member of the New Dem Coalition sign that letter, showing that unity. We are building that unity. I will continue to find those bridges to build, because the more we stand united, the better we are. Democrats, every one of us voted against that budget a few weeks ago that is going to cut Medicaid by potentially $880 billion. The threat to Medicaid is not just the people who rely on Medicaid and SNAP and other programs, but if you cut Medicaid, you're cutting the foundation of hospitals, not like Lake Forest or Advocate near here, but your rural hospitals around the country that already in Illinois, 6 have closed. This is the challenge that people are facing, and we need to make sure they understand it. So I'll go back to my pencil example. The more 2 fingers, great. If I can get 3, 4, and 5 fingers on that pencil, we can go faster, we can go farther. The African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone, go far, go together. We have to do it together. I think the best way to do it, I didn't really talk about the President's joint address to Congress and what you saw. I made it very clear, and I expressed my disappointment the next day. There are ways to win a moment. And I won't be critical of Al Green, who stood up and waved his cane and said, to the president, you don't have a mandate to cut Medicaid. That's what he was saying. But once he made that point, he won the moment, but then he lost the argument. And everything else that you saw that night, let me finish. So let me finish, because the next day, here's why I'm being critical. The next day, on every news show, on every radio show, on every podcast, and every newspaper, the lead wasn't what the president said and the Republicans were doing, but it's what the Democrats did the night before. So we have to remember, it's sometimes you win a moment, sometimes you win an argument, sometimes you win a day, but we've got to be in this for the long fight, and we have to win the fight. So there are times that the fight is going to require theatrics, major theatrics, but it has to put us on a path to do what we have to do, which is winning the long term and making sure we stop what the administration is trying to do to our government and our Constitution. We've got to get the control of the narrative back, and we're going to do that. Back over here.
All right, before we get to the next question, I have 5 more tickets to read. I put them on the board, but I'm going to read them right now. We have 6199978, 520037, 5199994, 620012, 520038.
And if I had thought of this in advance, we would have had Price is Right music playing as people were coming down. Come on down.
Hi, Ms. Schneider. My name is Roger from Gurney. With light of just the information that I got on my phone earlier today about the Department of Education, what is in talks about what the next steps are and what should we expect going forward for teachers and students, that rely on, that are sped or rely on these services?
Yeah. Thank you. How many teachers do we have in the room? Thank you for what you do. Let me ask you a second question. I'm going to move to, and I'm going to answer the question. I'm jumping around. Do we have any federal workers in the room? Thank you. And before I answer the question, I'm going to take a victory lap on one thing. The one that stood up, and I did see you here, Adam Mulvey. Adam, I'm going to have you stand up. Adam was my guest at the joint address to Congress. Adam is a 20-year veteran, a Army reconnaissance scout, served 3 tours of duty in Iraq, 1 tour of duty in Afghanistan. He retired in 2019, first in Washington State, and then came to this area a little over a year ago to be closer to his wife's family. And I think, is that Olivia next to you? That's his daughter, Olivia. And we talked about you that night about red hair. My wife has red hair too. So, Adam worked at the James A. Lovell Federal Healthcare Center as an emergency management specialist, responsible for developing the plans and the scenarios of a crisis, whether that is a tornado, a mass casualty event, electrical outage, whatever the case might be, he developed those plans. And he was getting rave reviews. And he'd been there for 11 months. That 11 months is important because it means that he was still in the probationary period of his employment. He was not on probation, he was in the probationary period of his employment, which means, you know where I'm going on this, when DOJ is doing their thing and they want up 60,000 veterans cut out of their jobs, he got that letter. What time did it come? 9 o'clock at night on February 13th saying your services are no longer desired and we're letting you go because you're not doing a good job. Now, I should let Adam tell the story because when he got his last paycheck, the day before the president's speech on I guess it would have been March 3rd, he got his final amount of pay and his performance bonus for doing such a good job, right? And if you didn't see Adam on TV, as good as he might be in his job, because I don't know what he does in his job, he was even better in making the case of why it was so wrong to fire these veterans and fire these federal workers. Because federal workers and teachers shouldn't be vilified. They should be venerated and celebrated because of the work that they do. And it wasn't just me. It was many of my colleagues brought examples of the people who served our nation, put on a uniform, put their lives on the line. And believe me, if your son or daughter is a reconnaissance scout, you do not sleep at night. And came back and said, I'm not done serving my country and my fellow veterans, and went to work for the VA. So we made the case, we made it loud. I sent a letter to the VA saying, bring back all these veterans. And was it today you got the letter saying you're coming back? So. So Tobin, I don't know where you were sitting, but the argument of sometimes you win the moment, that was that night. Sometimes you win the argument or the day, and that's now, but we can't rest. We have to keep fighting, and that's what we're doing. So to your question about the Department of Education, I was sort of stalling because I only saw the news as I was driving over here. So I don't have all the details, but he's signing president's signing an executive order. We knew it was coming. So this is a real concern. Our education systems in each state's a little bit different, but nationally it's about 8 to 12% of education funding comes from the federal government. The rest comes from local and state. Here in Illinois, we put the most of the burden on local. That's partly why our property taxes are so high and why there's disparities in our school. That's a discussion for another day. But imagine taking 10% and 10% of funding out of programs like special education, like gifted education, all of these things that are critically important, and you're going to put schools in a position of a whole lot of hurt. And so we are talking about it, trying to find other ways to address funding. The Department of Education was created by President Carter in 1979. So comparatively, it's relatively of recent vintage. There are ways to get there. And the other thing, the argument is Department of Education is creating curriculum. Federal government does not create any curriculum anywhere in the country. It's not what their responsibility is. Right. Right. It's one of many things that need to be debunked. And that's why I'm saying it here. We need to make sure that the United States is educating our kids to compete in a global economy. And other countries are rising. Their kids are rising in their reading skills, their writing skills, their ability to think critically, but also their ability to think innovatively. We led the world in the last century because we were inventing things here, making these things here and shipping them around the world. Right? I was reading something unrelated, related to R&D, but what was once more than 40% of the innovation and the innovation developers in computers and technology in the United States has dropped well below 30%. Right? The rest of the world is going to leapfrog us. And if that happens, it's only going to be a vicious circle. So I'll put out more of what we're going to do for education because we have to defend education. I mentioned my 2 boys. I'm very proud of my boys. Every one of our kids deserves the education my kids got, not just because they were born somewhere lucky to parents who invested in their education, but because they were born in the richest country in the world that invests in every kid's education. And that's what we're to do. So thank you. I guess the next question over here.
Hi, Juliana Furlong from Green Oaks. So thank you for having this. I want to build on the question that the woman asked a little earlier when she was talking about what's the common message, what's the infographic, what have you. And the information you shared, I think, was really helpful to understand how the DNC and the RNC are really focused on the presidential office. That kind of leaves a gap as to, some lack of clarity regarding leadership based on how the groups are organized. So I appreciate the clarity, but really listening to that, it doesn't sound good enough. What it sounds like is that the parties are, organized not necessarily to serve the people. And that's also a blockade to be able to solve some of these things. And what are you and other representatives, how are you stepping forward to make those changes to enable the parties to really work for the people?
Great question. I'm going to walk this tightrope. I'm here officially again, so I'm talking somewhat generically. I'm here officially, and if I don't walk that line, I don't get to. So, with all respect, I am here officially. This is not a campaign event, and there is a thick line between the two. I respect that line because I think it's proper, but I also respect that line because it's the law. So I appreciate where you are, but I have to do my job, which is here, and I think I can answer the question, but you have to understand I have responsibilities. And as I said before, I represent everybody. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. It doesn't change where I stand. It doesn't change what I believe. And I think I have been pretty clear on these things. What I was going to say is we do have these silos. And I was frustrated with the last administration because they didn't reach out to the House. They didn't, especially President Biden didn't talk to moderates who were trying to say, we've got to address the concerns of a much broader group, because if we don't, we're going to see a divide split the other way. And you've seen the polling that has Democrats at 29% positive rating, right? The frustration last week, the House Democrats, all but one, voted against the continuing resolution. Now, a continuing resolution is exactly what it says. It continues last year's budget. So on September 30th, when the government's going to close on October 1st, because that's our fiscal year, if you do a continuing resolution, you can buy a day or a week or maybe a few weeks or a month to keep negotiating to get it done. But the responsibility of Congress is to identify and determine what are the priorities for this year and allocate our funds appropriately. What the Republicans did last week is they said, no, we're just going to pretend that 2025 doesn't exist, and we'll keep 2024 for the rest of this year and focus on 2026. They abdicated their responsibilities. Every Democrat but one voted against that in the House, and if he was needed, Jared Golden would have voted with us, but he didn't need the vote. And the Senate is where there's a filibuster. There's a chance to stand up and block something that is an abdication of responsibility. But I can't explain why, but they made the decision in the Senate not to do that. What I can do, and this goes back to the earlier question of trying to build bridges, is I'm reaching across trying to talk to senators, and I was texting back and forth with the 2 Illinois senators and other senators saying, what's going on? I wrote a text to some of my colleagues on the other side of the Capitol saying, you guys do the right thing, and I promise you, speaking on behalf with my new Dem hat on, we've got your back. That's how I think we can try to get there. But the silos are a problem in business, they're a problem in education, they're a problem in government. And the silos are absolutely a problem. It makes it harder. And it makes it harder to have a singular voice. So I appreciate where you're coming from, but I have a very defined role where I am in this, on this stage, in this audience. So thank you.
Good evening, Congressman. My name's Mark Peter Standa. I'm from Lake Bluff. We voted for you every time since 2012, and we'll probably continue to do so, but we're starting to question why. There's an old saying, and it basically holds, maybe it's a truism, I think it is, or proverb, that you have to sometimes fight fire with fire. The Republicans, certainly MAGA and Trump, use a lot of fire, and they're fighting, and they have a singular message, pretty much. And we mostly, Democrats, fundamentally disagree with that. We're worried now that we're getting milquetoast leadership, and we're worried, more importantly, that what fire we may be getting out of our elected officials is crossfire between the factions in the Democratic Party and not focused fire where it needs to be sent. So my question is, what is your plan to decide what is the appropriate fire, when to bring it, and where to aim it?
Thank you. I will tell you, I ask the question every day. It's a great question. And I keep thinking of historical examples. And this may not satisfy you, but this is, I'm showing you where my head is. I think about the famous line, don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes. Because it's no good to shoot our fire before there's a chance to actually have an effect. And then when the fire really comes, we've lost. I think about, and there's many examples of this of history, of the heroes who are celebrated for having stood their ground and rather than surrendering to the enemy, take their own lives. But those heroes aren't there to fight the next day. That's the end of their story. So I worry about that. I know that this battle is not a one-day battle. It's not a 2-year battle. It's at least a 4-year battle. And it's probably a battle that's going to last beyond that and beyond me. And so every day when I wake up, and I'll share too much, and Julie says, "How you doing?" And I just say, "Huh." I mean, I start my day with the weight of the world on my shoulders. We all do. We turn on the news and say, I'm here in an official capacity. I also don't know how many kids are here, so I'm going to exercise what I'm going to censor myself a little bit. But there's a lot of expletives. But I got to get dressed and go back out and fight. And sometimes the fight is in a committee hearing where I'm pounding the table. And I've got to scream and yell. And I've done that. And sometimes it's going to the floor of the House and bringing it there. Sometimes it's introducing legislation. Sometimes I have only the arrows in my quiver. I don't get your quiver. I have my quiver. And my quiver is I can write letters to officials. I can introduce legislation. I can sign on to amicus briefs that are supporting the legislation. And I can try to use my soapbox to inspire others to speak up. I know that there are 3 things we have that ultimately will deliver us where we have to be. So when we start talking strategy, we have legislation. In the minority, it's very limited what we can do in the minority, which is why it's important that Hakeem Jeffries become the speaker in 2 years. But right now, we can introduce legislation, we can try to push legislation, we can use what's called a discharge petition, which is our only vehicle to bring it something to the floor. But you need 218 signatures, so we have to convince some Republicans to join with us. So I'm working to find those Republicans on different ideas, different pieces of legislation to get things to the floor, right? We can support litigation. Congress can't, I don't have standing to litigate. Other groups bring that on behalf of immigrants, on behalf of federal workers, on behalf of seniors, and we can support that and say, this is what we meant when we wrote these laws. That's what we put in those amicus briefs. And it hopefully helps the court. So it's legislation, litigation, but the most important thing, and I quote Abraham Lincoln a lot, which I really quote Nancy Pelosi, who quoted Abraham Lincoln, who said, public sentiment is everything. With it, you can do anything. Without it, you can do nothing. Trump got won the popular vote. He didn't get a majority, but he won the popular vote. Republicans won the House and the Senate. They started this year with public sentiment. By shining the light and using our platforms and using our soapboxes, we are showing people the impacts what they're doing is going to have on the lives of all the people here. And what was high 50s support has dropped to low 50s, has dropped to now under 50. The president now is underwater. His disapproval rating is higher than his approval rating. But that's a start. We need to continue to show that what they are trying to do is not good for the country, is not good for our communities, it's not good for our families. And when those impacts play out, hopefully we can get the public outcry to make a difference. But in January 21st, how many people walked in the march on January 21st, 2017? Okay, a handful. How many people watched the march on January 21st, 2025? You did? Because I didn't see one. Right? It's a different moment and a different feeling. You're starting to see that public upswell, and the more we see it, the harder it will be. And when we get the public upswell, that's maybe when we see the whites of their eyes. So it's a question I have every day. It's a long answer, and I don't know that I'm satisfied, but this is the hardest question we have. And we can't have a circular firing squad, because that will mean we're shooting at each other and not shooting at the problems. So thank you.
All right, before we get to our next question, I do want to check time, and we did say we would try to wrap by.
Let's keep going. We'll do another round of 5 after this one.
So I have 3 numbers right now to call. Please take a look at your ticket right now. I have 620025, 520027, 61999. 7.
So while they're coming up, I'm going to talk about ESPN. You never thought I would bring a story up from ESPN at a political town hall. ESPN.com. Defense Department removes story on Jackie Robinson's military service. So when you talk about where we fight, Jackie Robinson was one of my heroes for what he did in baseball, but he also served the country. Also removed the story of Major General Jeannie Leavitt. She's the first woman combat pilot. We have Naval Station Great Lakes in our district. Every Navy recruit who signs up to join the Navy, wherever they sign up, including from countries not the United States, comes to North Chicago for their basic training. And if you go see that, that's worth clapping for. If you go see the graduation, you're going to see a whole lot of different faces there, coming from different places in the country, growing up with different faiths, different experiences, and they're all united in one mission, which is defending the United States of America and protecting our safety, security, freedoms, and liberty. And to do this, to try to erase the contributions of people like Jackie Robinson or Jeannie Leavitt is disgraceful. So I just wanted to make sure, no one asked about that, but I brought it there because I wanted to talk about it. And then I could talk about ESPN at a town hall.
Hi, I'm Ashby Beasley from Highland Park, Illinois. It's good to see you. And I applaud you for doing this and not being a coward like our Republican lawmakers who are hiding from their constituents. So I appreciate it. And I wouldn't be me if I didn't point out that they also removed the 10 pages of the Navajo code talkers because of DEI. As a Native American woman, they also slashed funding to Native tribes in the CR.
Right.
So
not just the Navajo code talkers, but they erased the image of one of the people who raised the flag at Iwo Jima.
Yep, that too. Yep. So this is.
We're all reading the same news.
So for me, I think, we have Elon Musk who's saying civil war. We have funding being taken away actively. Head Start programs are shutting down and not having access to money. We're looking at Social Security. I mean, these are really, really scary times. I think everyone wakes up collectively, holding their breath to see what's going to happen next. And my question for you is I know you try to tread this line, but we are going to come to a point where that line, it's going to cross. And we see people like AOC, we see people like Jasmine Crockett, we see people like Bernie who are loud, they are angry, they are screaming and yelling. And I know that we have to try to tread that line. But I think what we want to see from you is we want to see you take those gloves off. And what we want to see is for you to stand up for us. And I think there's a couple ways you can do that. Uplift young people. We have young members of Congress. Lift them up, support them, push them forward, bring them in, have conversations with them, show up at marches in Washington, D.C. When we activate, when we go out there and we are ready to knock on doors and march in the streets, show up with us, stand next to us. We won't stand with you. We will go to jail for you if you come and you stand with us. And my question to you is, I don't want to ask you to say to Trump what you think of him, but I want you to say something to give all of us hope. Give us hope. Give us something to leave here with and say, we have his back, but he has our back. He's not going to back down.
Ashby, thank you. So I will tell you, first, talking to young people, I don't know that there's a member of Congress who talks to more young people than I do. I go to schools, I meet them in communities. Today I had breakfast with a father and his son, 18-year-old, I don't know, he's a senior in high school going off to college, to talk about what's going on and exactly the line, where do you go? And we talked about this, and we talked about some of the issues. I'm going to use, and Adam, I may ask for your help here because I'm going to use a military example, but I may get it wrong. So Adam did reconnaissance scout. If I guess that are folks, it's a small group who goes out ahead of the main force who, it's not even the tip of the spear, it's the wind at the front of the tip of the spear. Is that right? Okay. And there are people who are doing supply, who are making sure that As the Army comes behind the work you've done, they've got the weapons and the food and everything else we need. And there are people who are snipers and people who are responsible for ordnance and people who are responsible for giving cover. There are helicopter pilots and fighter pilots, and there are way up high, the pilots who are handling all the electronics. Did I get it right? And every one of those people has a role and a job, and most of them are in those roles and jobs because it fits their personality. Now, I have the greatest respect for AOC and for Jasmine Crockett and for Jamie Raskin. They are really good at what they do. Jamie is a constitutional scholar. When I was on Judiciary Committee, I would sit and listen to him, and I was glad to be right behind him because I couldn't make the arguments he was making, but I could close the argument after he made it. So I have my role, and there's things that I'm really good at. I'm good at uplifting those young people. I'm good at bringing people together. I'm good at growing our base. So we're at, from 42 to 100 to 115, 10 to now 115 to get that singular voice. I'm good at sitting in the leadership meeting with Hakeem Jeffries and taking and talking about how do we synthesize. My best skill is strategy. That's what I did for my career, and it's what I'm working to do to say, how do we get from where we are to where we have to be? But if I'm on TV trying to be Jasmine Crockett, if you think it's hard for me to walk, talk, and do the video, I'm not Jasmine Crockett. And if I said, imagine me, you guys know me well enough, sitting in a hearing, snapping back at Marjorie Taylor Greene with what I can't even say the words, I can't get the cadence that Jasmine had, right? It would not have gone viral, or if it did, it wouldn't be viral for the right reasons. So we all have our roles to play. Every day I mentioned getting up. I leave Julie every week to go to Washington and leave her alone here at home. It's not easy because I know that my job is representing the 10th District of Illinois to the best of my abilities. And I'm willing to give it every ounce I have, up to and including every ounce I have. That's all I'm going to say on that one. But we all have our role to play. And as it was said earlier, the circular firing squad is the worst thing we can do. I'm trying to get us pointing in the same direction. Reaching across to the Senate. In the past, my first day when we went for orientation, we get a tour of the House. And we're getting this tour, and it's the first time I'd ever been in the Capitol on the floor. And the guy giving us the tour says, remember this, the other party is your opposition. The Senate is your enemy. And everybody laughed. And the more we go along, we realize that the fights between the House and the Senate sometimes are not inter-party, but inter-chamber. And I'm reaching across the Senate. I focused on the House until this past year. I'm reaching and talking to senators now more than I ever have. And I'm traveling around the country trying to help people, lifting those people up, bringing in new members, counseling new members. I've been on the phone with 3 different members today talking about what they're doing, getting them ready for their town hall, because they haven't done these before. I don't know how many I've done, but I know most of the people here have been to at least some of them, and will continue to do it. So I hear the frustration, and I know that there are people who wish that I could sing and dance like Fred Astaire, or give a speech like AOC with 1 million people following. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, my colleague from Florida, has started a thing where she's talking while cooking. Not happening, right? Well, on video, and she's just talking about politics. Everyone's got to find their place. My place is making sure that we have all of the, what do you call those different roles and functions in the military, but that we have all of that so we can defend our democracy, uphold our Constitution, and make sure that what Trump and Musk are trying to do is a dark chapter, but not the end of the book.
I would like to start. My name is Rachel Perkel, and I'm here from Mundelein. And I want to start, as I always do, by saying thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, you are one hardworking member of the House, and I, for one, appreciate everything you do for your constituents. Number 2, I went to Washington, D.C. for that march, and I hear a lot about the single voice, and I even rail about the single voice myself. But I just want to share for a moment the power of multiple messages. To have been in Washington, D.C. with a couple million of my close friends, and the power of the signs and the varied messages, which were all about humanity, empathy, our planet, our future. And it came in all sorts of messages. So while we all want one voice, there's so much power in all of our messages, because fundamentally, I think we're all standing and asking for the same thing, which is the future of our planet, our children, and ourselves. So that's it.
And our country.
And our country, that goes without saying, I think. That said, let's get that crystal ball out. Let's talk about 2 years from now. Let's talk about midterms. How's it looking? And can you give us hope on that front?
That is a much harder line for me here. Right? We need to make sure there will be midterms. There will be midterms. So I carry with me, I've got it behind my phone, Constitution. And this one, I wrote 2025, and I made a note, rereading in the context of the Trump administration's actions. So I'm taking notes and everything. But in Article 1, it talks about the elections. And it's the one thing I wish I could change about the Constitution when they wrote it is every 2 years for the House. But it's in the Constitution. So that gives me confidence that we're going to have the election. The question is, what will it look like? And we need to work to protect it. The other thing it says is that every state is responsible for the time, manner, and fashion of the elections. So it's at the state level, which really means it's at the level of all of you. The public has to make sure that we have those elections, and we will focus on that. I believe, and I'm staying as close to the line as I can, that as we coalesce and unite, and I believe it will not just be Democrats who do this, and say that what in the Declaration of Independence, you caught me stopping myself. In the Declaration of Independence, it says we're all created equal, and that we're endowed with inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And when we talk about that, each of us have different definitions of what makes us happy, and it is that collection mosaic of the American people, e pluribus unum, that will lead us there. That in the Constitution, the first words are, in order to form a more perfect union, and it lays out what it is exactly that our government is supposed to be doing, the common good, and et cetera, for posterity. We've got to bring that together. And if we bring together, if we bridge the gap, we will be able to push back against at the moment, minority view that has taken hold of our government and is trying to force it on the rest of us. And the first chance we will have to rise up and rip off the burden of what we're experiencing is the next election. So the more we shine that light, the more we pound the table, the more the people who can dance go out and dance, and who can scream go out and scream, and who can organize. But the more we get that and stay focused on the country coming together to proclaim that, by the way, it's the 250th anniversary, the year of the next election, that there's a word for that, and if too many syllables for me, but it's the 250th celebration of an experiment that just cannot be allowed to die, that the midterm elections will send a resounding message. But we need to make sure that the public speaks out and makes sure that message is heard. And that's as far as I can go in this context. Winning ticket?
Winning ticket. Thank you, Congressman. I share the outrage and the
Name,
frustration.
introduce yourself.
Matthew from Mundelein.
Thank you,
A lot of
Matthew.
Mundelein people here.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating that to hear you say that you're reaching across the aisle, but the aisle, nobody wants to talk to you on the other side. Nobody's reaching back. And because they know that the Dems are weak. And it's very frustrating. But at some point, you're going to have to answer to constituents when their Social Security checks stop coming.
Right.
What is your plan for that? And what are you doing to stand in the way of America helping to forcibly remove the Palestinian people from their homeland?
So, Matt, let me touch on a number of things. One, I'm going to ask, don't put words in my mouth. I haven't said that I'm reaching across the aisle. Right now, I said I'm working to find allies on the other side that we can try to get things done. In the past, 100% reaching across the aisle, but right now it is a very different circumstance because they're looking at us. Now, they may be looking at us weak, but they're not coming to talk to folks like me because they think we're weak. They're not talking to me right now because they're afraid of what they're facing in their caucus, in their conference. And what I'm saying is we will help you. If you stand up and do what's right, we're going to stand up and help protect you. And when I say protect you, I'm talking about physical at times as well. So we have to, we had two, sadly we lost two of our colleagues. So right now we need 5 Republicans. I don't need them to become Democrats. I just need them to say what their party is doing is wrong, and they're not going to be a party to it and join us to stand in the way. We are screaming loud, and if you don't believe me, and again, everyone has a role to play, go look at the video of John Larson in the Ways and Means Committee last Monday. Right? Every one of us were a part of bringing that resolution forward so we could have that hearing, and every one of us raised our voices. John does it better than some of us, but we raised our voices and we said we cannot let Social Security fail. We are talking about the closing of Social Security offices, and I didn't know this. I didn't really do the math until last week. Every day, about 120,000 people show up at a Social Security office to have an issue resolved, addressed, or a question answered. 600,000 people a week, 2.5 million people every month. More pick up the phone and get hopefully a quick answer on the phone that they don't have to drive to an office to get resolved. And Musk is trying to close both, so it makes it impossible. We're fighting that tooth and nail. And that does include, we have to go stand in front of those Social Security offices and rally, not just to protest what Musk is doing, but to protect and rally in behalf of those seniors who depend on Social Security just to get through on a day-to-day basis. Now, at that hearing, I guess it was last Tuesday, not Monday, at that hearing, we brought to the attention that Musk was trying to end the phone lines. And the next day they announced they were slowing it down. They weren't doing it. So I can't even call it a victory, but we had a step forward. And every day we get a step forward, we'll take it. But they're still fighting to close those offices down, and we're going to continue to fight to make sure they're not closed. Now, back in, I think it was January 29th, when President Trump talked about forcibly removing 2 million Palestinians from Gaza. I believe I may have been the first one to say that that isn't just immoral, it's illegal, and that it can't happen. Now, everyone here knows where I stand, and I am fully supportive of the U.S.-Israel relationship. I am a Zionist. I am a proud Zionist. Everyone's welcome to have their opinion. Anyway, what I was saying is I will defend Israel's right to exist as a Jewish democratic state, and no one has worked. If you want to hear what I have to say, you'll let me finish, and I will answer the question, and then we can have a discussion. No one in Congress has worked harder than I have to try to make sure aid gets into Gaza. I am one of the founders of the Abraham Accords Caucus, trying to bring peace to the region. We created a Gaza working group to make sure that there's a plan for a day after to rebuild Gaza for the people of Gaza. I've made my position clear. I will fight to do that. I have worked with the American government. I've worked with the ambassadors from Egypt, from UAE, from Bahrain, from Morocco, and developed close working relations. Saudi Arabia, close working relationships with all of those people. There can never be peace. All right, if you want the history lesson, I'll give you the history lesson. In 1947, the UN created a partition plan. The Jews accepted it, the Arabs rejected it. In 1948, the British left. The Jews declared their state. Israel was attacked by 5 Arab nations. And yet I still believe that both Israelis and Palestinians have a claim to dignity, to self-determination. I believe in the Abraham Accords. It was the first document that said both Arabs and Jews belong to the same land, and they have to find a way to live in peace in that land. And that's what I'm committed to. I recognize the history. I recognize the history of the region. I recognize the dignity of all people in the region. And I know the only way there will be peace if both people have the chance to set their course of their own futures. And as long as Hamas controls Gaza and threatens Israel, there won't be peace.
All right, and Congressman,
yes,
we have been asked that because we're up to the 8 o'clock hour that we do have.
All right, we are wrapping up. So let me wrap up on that. Let me say thank you to everyone. We stayed longer than the hour. I appreciate all of you staying and being with us tonight. I appreciate the respect, for the most part, the respect we had for each other and different opinions. We all don't agree. That's democracy, and that's okay. The way we achieve a progress and a step forward, and Ashby, you asked for the hope. The way we go forward is we know that this is a country that's built on diversity. That's what e pluribus unum is, from many one. That's built on equity. Every one of us is equal before the law, and is built on inclusion. When we say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, we say one nation under God, indivisible, for all. That's what Hakeem Jeffries said, and no one has said it better. I am committed to the dream that our founders had when they created this country 248 years ago. I'm committed to improving our country to that more perfect union that we can all do together. I'm fighting for our community, for the 10th district, and for our country. And the reason I know that we'll be successful is because of the conversation we had here today. All of you on a rainy night, willing to come out and speak to each other, listen to each other. I know not everyone got to ask a question. We went a little bit longer so more people could. I appreciate that. But we need to keep talking to each other. We need to listen to each other and hear each other's concerns and priorities. And if we do that, we have been through many very challenging times. A civil war, a Great Depression. Most recently, we've been through a Great Recession in 2008 and a pandemic in 2020. But we came through that. And I started talking about our kids in school who are feeling better about the future. They'll feel good about the future if our generation joins together to secure the future for them. And if we do that, when we do that, then we will get through this dark moment. So thank you. I look forward to continuing the conversation.